Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to your Business with Accent Dominies again today. I'm Daniel Olukayode Adeyemo. So if you've been following through, you know that we've been talking about what next after your business registration. And over time, we've been made to realize the fact that once you're done with your registration, it doesn't end there, especially when you want to actually run a successful business. Now today we're looking at SCUML registration. Now mind you, this registration, unlike last week when we talked about trademark, it's not really optional, it is compulsory. Yes, it is very compulsory. And although it's not compulsory for all businesses, so some of the businesses we'll be mentioning today, you'll be made to know that, okay, this particular business is compulsory, that, okay, this business registers under SCUML. So if you remember last week, I said something about the fact that, when you register, like when it comes to registering, there are certain registrations that are one-off. There are some that are done by every business. So SCUML, for example, now being the subject of discourse for today, it doesn't apply to all businesses in general. There are certain businesses that have been marked out that that has to do, these businesses have to do, have to carry out the SCUML registration, right? So it's very necessary for us to note that. And the second thing is that it is compulsory. It is for these businesses we're talking about. All right. So now today I'll be taking you through the background. What all that SCUML is all about, functions. I'll be taking you through the statutory obligations of businesses that come under, that needs to be registered under SCUML. I'll be taking you through procedures for SCUML registration. I'll be taking you through additional registration requirements for some other businesses under this business, because not all businesses that are under SCUML, that needs to be registered under SCUML, have to carry out certain additional registration requirements. So some of these businesses, I'll give you some examples of them and those requirements in terms of the document you need to submit, so you would understand as we go on. Alright, so now, background. So SCUML, SCUML, now it's the acronym for Special Control Unit Against Money Laundering. Now, it was established in 2005, in furtherance of the need to combat the financing of terrorism. I'm sure you would know, you're familiar with the fact that certain people actually, fund terrorism. They go ahead to, sponsor the, arms and ammunition. You watch things, you see them, you see people, you see terrorists that actually use ammunition that even the Nigerian army, even the Nigerian police force don't even use. So now the whole essence of this is to actually combat things like this. Now, statutorily speaking, SCUML is under the Federal Ministry of Trade, in full, Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, in full. So, but then operationally speaking, SCUML is domiciled under EFCC, the EFCC. Now, for better understanding, if you're very familiar with the parliamentary system of government, you know that we have the head of state and we have the head of government. Right, the head of state mainly performs ceremonial duties, while the head of government, performs the real duties such as overseeing the states. So now you can, on your own liking, the Federal Ministry of Trade, to be performing the ceremonial duties, while the EFCC, you can liken them to performing the real duties. So you can now say that the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment comes under the head of state, while the EFCC comes under the head of government. Do you understand that? I really do. I really hope you do, right? So now let's move on to, okay, before I state the functions of SCUML, we need to understand that SCUML enforces every law relating to anti-money laundering and combating of the financing of terrorism. So every law that goes against money laundering or financing of terrorism, SCUML enforces these laws. It's very important for you to note that. Now, let's look at functions of SCUML. Now, SCUML, it is one of the first function is registration and certification of DNFIS in Nigeria. So what is DNFI? DNFI simply means designated non-financial institutions. So if you remember, I said not all businesses are to do registration under SCUML, right? So those categories of businesses that actually do this registration, they are tagged designated non-financial institutions. So these are the businesses that actually that needs to be registered under SCUML. So now, a first function like I mentioned is the registration and certification of these businesses in Nigeria. Now, when we were talking earlier, just a few minutes ago, I mentioned something about ceremonial duties and real duties. Now, the ministry actually determines the businesses that qualify as, designated non-financial institutions. That is, these businesses that should register under SCUML. So there is the ministry that actually determine, okay, this business, okay, based on whatever parameter they actually set up, this business should actually come, and should actually be registered under SCUML. So that is their duty. So that in itself, it feels ceremonial in a way, right? So so what are these DNFI? Like the DNFIs, what are they? These are businesses involving jewelry, cars and luxury goods. So at this point, please, I will need you to actually pay attention to see, whether your business falls under this, because you might be contravening these requirements at this point, even as you're listening currently, so put down your ears to actually note whether your business falls under this categories, so that you can make necessary adjustments in real time, right? So now, designated non-financial institutions include businesses involving jewelry, cars and luxury goods. So when you sell cars, when you deal in luxury goods, you must register. You have to register under SCUML. Now, precious stones, businesses like this that deal in precious stones and metals, real estate, estate development, surveyors, valuers, estate agents, chartered accountants, audit firms, tax consultants, hotels, casinos, non-governmental organizations, money lending firms like Rain Money. So all these organizations, and then even more as the ministry determines, as the ministry designates. So these businesses are required under the law that they be registered with SCUML. Right. So another function is sensitization of these businesses on their compliance obligation and implementation guidelines, specifically the employees. So SCUML, they are required to actually carry out sensitization of employees of these businesses, to ensure compliance with the obligations, in order for them not to run foul of the anti-money laundering guidelines, rules, and all that. So now, another function is monitoring and supervision of these business activities as it relates to anti-money laundering and combating financing of terrorism. Right, so they are to monitor and supervise the activities of these businesses that are to be registered. So this is one of the things they do. They monitor. Now they also inspect. So it's at this point that they come to see, businesses that are not actually registered, because of course they already have a list of businesses that ordinarily they should carry out their SCUML registration. So at this point of inspection, this way they come to say that certain businesses are not even registered. So it is advised, if you are listening and within list of businesses I stated earlier, if you feel that okay, if your business actually falls within these categories, you should please take the right steps before it's before it's too late, basically. So it's advisable that you go on and register under SCUML. Now take necessary enforcement actions to ensure compliance. So this is one thing they also do. They take necessary enforcement actions to ensure compliance, with the anti-money laundering laws and the combating financing of terrorism regulations. There are regulations around these things, so they carry out extra measures to ensure that you comply. Now another function is the establishment and maintenance of a comprehensive database of business transactions. So in the process of, although I don't want to get ahead of myself here, but I want you to bear in mind that they actually establish and maintain a comprehensive database of businesses and transactions. So the moment you register under SCUML, there's a database that actually takes down your record. And then the moment after registering, because once you register, it doesn't end there. You need to make certain reports. You need to send certain reports. You need to register certain reports. So the moment you pass those reports on, it is also registered in the database as well. So another thing is they collaborate with stakeholders to ensure compliance. So whether you like it or not, there are bodies that have been established to actually further the cause of preventing this issue of money laundering and all the financing terrorism. So they collaborate with these bodies to actually ensure compliance as well. So you can see they are going all out to ensure that and end disputes to financing of terrorism and money laundering. I hope you get that. So they also carry out strategic analysis using available data to identify emerging trends in money laundering. So the database I mentioned earlier, so they use the data to actually monitor trends, to be able to devise and to know because these things happen. Criminals generally that run foul of this course, they devise different means every day. So with the database available to them, they're able to spot and strategically analyze possible deviant means through which people are using to carry out money laundering and the rest. Now they also collect cash-based transaction reports. They collect currency transaction reports. They also collect suspicious transaction reports for forwarding to the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit. So this is how it goes. These reports, although I'll be speaking a bit on them later, we'll get to understand what it stands for, because it's very important you understand them. So this is how it goes. These reports are passed on to SCUML. Then SCUML now passes it on to the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit, the NFIU. So that is the ultimate, repository where these reports actually go to. Now, another function is they provide vital information relating to these businesses. Of course, they have data at their disposal. They have, especially for the businesses that have been remitting, they've been doing the necessary things they should do, the list of business registered with them, and the transactions they've come and registered with them. It's one thing they do with this data is that they provide vital info relating to these businesses. Where there are issues on ground, they can use the data they have at that's available to them to actually monitor, to actually provide vital information. Now they also do money trails to assist criminal investigation. I'm sure we are Nigerians, and if you're not Nigerian in your country, there have been situations where they have to trail money, all those things. So SCUML actually comes in this place as well. They also put in their own bits in terms of criminal investigation that has to do with money laundering and financing of terrorism. Thank you. Okay, so now let's move on to statutory obligations of these businesses we spoke about. The designated non-financial institutions. It's more or less like the umbrella word encapsulating all these businesses. So some of the obligations include: one, to register with SCUML. So now you need to register with SCUML. Now it is largely done online. So it's for you to, once like we stated earlier, some of those businesses, once you have a business that comes under that subheading, if that has been stated in the rules, as we've stated to you, if you had your business, I do this business, it's 1 year and I've not done my SCUML, please go ahead and register, please. All right. So they also make currency transaction reports of any single cash transaction above 5 million. Now 5 million, first of all, for individuals, where there's a transaction that involves exchange of money above 5 million naira for individuals, and then 10 million naira for corporate bodies. Now they have to make a report, and that's to be done within 7 days of that transaction happening. I hope you get this. All right. So they also make cash-based transaction reports to SCUML on any single transactions that is above $10,000. Now this is to be done also within 7 days from the date of transaction, and it is largely done online. And let's not forget, this report is made to SCUML. SCUML then now take it to the Financial Intelligence Unit, to the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit. So it's more or less from SCUML then to the final repository. All right. So after that, now they also make reports or transfer, or they make report of transfer to and from a foreign country where it is more than $10,000. Right. So transfer, whether to or from, any form of transfer, they have to make report of same once it is more than $10,000. So let me give you a practical example of this. For example, an hotel. An hotel is actually one of the businesses that actually have to do SCUML. If for any reason there's any transaction that has to do with, this is a very simple example anyways, that has to do with you transferring more than $10,000, or its equivalent, you need to make that report known to the SCUML, for forwarding to the financial intelligence unit. So $10,000, more than $10,000. Okay, so now also they also report. But I hope you know what we're saying here. The businesses, we're talking about the statutory obligation of businesses. So they also report suspicious transaction within 72 hours. You own an hotel and you notice, a suspicious transaction. Somehow you have to make report within 72 hours. So it's very, very necessary, especially when it's relating to terrorism. You have to make the necessary report. Alright, so now you're also to identify and verify your customers. It is very necessary. So of course, how do you identify your customers? You take down their names, take down their date of birth, you take down, if it's a business, take down the date of incorporation, all those details, you take it down, you take it down, you take it down. Now, how do you now verify? Of course, you verify using, their identities, their IDs, driver's license, international passports, national identity cards, those IDs, the ones that are recognized though, you use that as a means of verification. Alright, so you also keep record of all transactions. As a business, that's meant to be registered under SCUML, you keep records of all transactions within 5 years. So you have to keep record of every transaction you had within 5 years. After 5 years, you cannot choose, okay, we don't need these records, let's discard them. But for 5 years, you need to keep them, because these guys, remember one of the things we mentioned about their duties is that they actually come to inspect. If they come to want to inspect your record and then they are not finding the record, you are like transaction that happened a year ago, and and you don't have any record to back that up. Of course, you run foul of your obligations, right? So it's very necessary. Now, you also another statutory obligations of these businesses are to train employees on anti-money laundering obligations. Your employees have to be trained. Now, if you remember from what we said one of the functions of SCUML is that they actually educate, businesses, that is the employees of these businesses. So it's for you to actually take the first step of, putting your employees out there. I mean, taking them towards SCUML for, the sensitization and for the education, on anti-money laundering obligations, guidelines, and all those things. So it's one of the duties of businesses. So you have an hotel, it's very necessary for you to take your staff, your workers, to be sensitized on some of these things. Alright, so another duty of these businesses is that you guys are to actually appoint a compliance officer. Right, so you need a compliance officer that will liaise with SCUML. Right, you liaise with SCUML, and then they also ensure that you are in line, in terms of your obligations as it affects SCUML. Anti-money laundering guidelines, combating against financing terrorism. So your compliance officer is to liaise with SCUML and to ensure that your transactions are not shady. So that is also very important. Another thing is to train employees. Okay, we've mentioned that. Alright, let's move. Now, another one is to ensure transactions with customers in the branch offices are forwarded to the headquarters for onward forwarding to SCUML. So this is where you have a business and you have branches. So what you do is, from those different branches, you transfer to the headquarters, then you forward to SCUML. Now, of course, ultimately to the financial intelligence unit, of course. Alright, now you also to establish, another statutory obligation is to establish an internal auditing system that ensure all transactions are conducted based on anti-money laundering measures. So in other words, the long and short of it is that you have to have an internal auditor, who looks at your transactions, look at how you spend money, how money comes in and goes out. Is very, very necessary. Alright, so I hope you understand everything we've been saying so far. So moving on, let's look at the procedure for SCUML registration. So how do you, now that you've seen that, oh, my business I didn't even know that I was supposed to do SCUML registration and everything. And now that you know that you are aware, you know what you're supposed to do. So how do you go about it? What are the documents? Well, yeah, we will really be narrowing it down to the necessary documents you have to submit to SCUML. Now, if you're a business name, you have to submit your certificate of incorporation. You need to submit your business name form 01, that is the proprietor's particular. That form that contains the particulars of the proprietor of the business name. You need to submit evidence of tax registration. That is your tax identification number letter. That letter you submit, at the LIRS, the fire, wherever. You need to, because of course you are usually given a copy for yourself, which is stamped. So you need to, it's one of the things you submit. Now your BVN, the bank name, the account number has to be submitted as well as one of the documents you need to submit. And then professional certificate. So on this one, we'll be speaking a BDP. So your business may actually need this. Please stay tuned, and I'll be giving an example of certain businesses that require certain certificates, because without the certificate, if you submit these other ones, you won't be able to have a successful registration, right? So in a very short time from now, I'll be looking at some of these certificates, and you get to know whether it applies to you. The one that applies to you, take it. The one, if it doesn't apply to you, you know it for yourself. All right. So now for companies, you need to submit your certificate of incorporation. I'm sure you're familiar with this. That paper, that kind of greenish paper. You submit it. Memorandum and articles of association. You submit it. Of course, every company has this. Now your form CAC1 has to be submitted as well, right? So another thing that has to be submitted is the evidence of tax registration. That is your tax identification number letter. It has to be submitted as well. So we also have the bank verification number, the BVN. We also have the bank name and account number. It has to be submitted as well. And another thing that might not apply to all businesses, remember we mentioned professional certificates. So not all business names. That's why I want you to stay tuned to know if your business actually needs to actually submit these professional certificates. So for companies also, there are licenses, permits that might need to be submitted for certain businesses. So stay tuned and see through to the end. You get to know some of these businesses as well. All right. So now for trusts and NGOs, you need to submit your certificate of incorporation or registration. You need to submit your incorporation of trustees. You need to submit your identification of trustees with a valid means of identification. Right? You need to show proof that you actually have trustees and all those documents that support that you submit it. All right. You need to submit your constitution or memorandum and articles of association. So you need to submit this. So every trust, they usually have a constitution. So you need to also submit your tax identification number, or if you've been exempted. Most NGOs, some of them enjoy tax exemption for a while, right? So that letter or that document that evidences that you submitted, right? So now particulars of settlers, particulars of protector, copy of cooperation agreement for international NGOs. Now trust deed agreement for trust deed agreement, that agreement that evidences the trust, you need to submit it. And then the BVN, the bank name, the account number has to be submitted as well. Now for religious organizations, you need to submit your certificate of incorporation or registration. It's necessary you submit that. Then the incorporation of trustees, the identification of trustees with a valid means of at least 2 of the trustees. So you need to submit this. The BVN, bank name, and account number too has to be submitted. Alright, so now, like I promised, the additional requirements with regards to the professional certificates, the licenses and permits. So let's see if your business actually needs this. So come along. Alright, now, first of all, we have dealers in jewelry. Jewelry products, all those, the chains and the golds and everything. Now, an additional requirement to the other requirement you might need, the other document you might need to file, is evidence of registration with Jewelry Marketers Association of Nigeria, JMAN. Sorry. So there need to be an evidence that you've registered, you are part of this association. So that evidence, that document that evidences this, has to be submitted as well. So that's if you deal in jewelry products. And now for car dealers, now evidence of registration with Association of Motor Dealers of Nigeria, AMDON. Association of Motor Dealers of Nigeria. So you need to have an evidence that you're registered with this body, and that document that evidences that this, you actually have to submit it as part of the other document you submit. Now, hotels and hospitality business. Registration with Hotel Owners Forum Abuja, for those in Abuja, for those residents in Abuja, or Nigeria Tourism Development Corporation, NTDC. So, you need to show proof that you're part of this body in the form of a document which you submit. Now, casinos for pool betting and lottery businesses, licenses, license from either the National Lottery Commission or State Lotteries Board. So the whole essence of this is that there are boards, there are bodies behind some of these organizations that actually issue certain documents, certain certificates that, okay, to prove you are part of this body. So in the process of actually applying for SCUML, these are some of the documents you need to submit. It is very necessary. All right. So now, another one is audit firms, accounting firms, tax consultants. So it's for you to, in addition to the other documents, submit your ICANN certificate, ANAN, ACCA. So you need to submit some of these documents. They're very necessary. All right. So for estate surveyors and valuers, there's the Nigerian Institution of Estate Surveyors and Valuers, NIESV, or Nigeria Institute of Quantity Surveyors certificate. So a certificate will be issued to you that, proving that you are a part of this body, that you've qualified to actually carry out the kind of business you carry out under this body. So that certificate has to be submitted. That document has to be submitted. Now, for real estate dealers, there's a REDAN certificate, Real Estate Developers Association of Nigeria certificate. So you have to submit that, right, as part of the documents you submit. Now, for construction companies, there's a current membership certificate. If you don't want to use that, you can also, there's the Nigerian Society of Engineers membership certificate, etc. We also have the REDAN certificate, that is the Real Estate Developers Association of Nigeria certificates. Of course, construction companies, what are you constructing? You're constructing buildings, of course, real estate, so you might still need that certificate. You can also submit that certificate. Now, consulting companies, so relevant consulting certificates would suffice as well. Clearing and forwarding companies, evidence of registration with Council for the Regulation of Freight Forwarding in Nigeria. For dealers in precious stones and metals, you need to submit your exploration license or permit under the Ministry of Solid Minerals. So you need to submit this certificate. Now, license from a certified geologist too would suffice as well, right? So certified geologists can actually issue you a certificate. Now, for we're still talking about dealers in precious stones and metals, which has to do with digging and some things. For those exporting, the Nigerian Export Promotion Council, NEPC, the certificate that comes with being a part of this body. And then for those importing, bringing to the country, the Nigerian Investment Promotion Commission. So this one will mainly apply to, foreign companies, So you have to issue some of these certificates. Some of the certificates that are issued to you have to be filed in addition to the other documents that you file in order to actually successfully register with SCUML. So now the last but not the least, of course, law firms, CC Law Accent. You need to actually provide your court of birth certificate or legal practicing certificate. So that's like the certificate you provide in addition to the other documents. And let me be very specific. I'm not trying to be partial or something. Law firms, they are generally business names. And as a business name, as a partnership, larger partnership, those documents we highlighted, in addition to that, your court of birth certificate also, can also form a part of it as well. All right, so I want to believe that you all understand all I've stated here today, and I would like to emphasize something again. I mentioned it earlier. It is very compulsory. This is not trademark. You can choose not to carry out your trademark registration to your own detriment, of course, but no one will come and hold you. But then when you start to suffer the loss, that's when the issue comes in. SCUML is compulsory. though not for all businesses, but it is compulsory. And although, yes, like I said, not for all businesses. So once you have a business that comes under the the non-financial institutions, designated non-financial institutions. Once your business comes under this, it is very necessary. It is compulsory. Because there are businesses. I'm very sure there are businesses having issues of this currently. By virtue of the inspection that SCUML carry out from time to time. When they inspect and they notice that this one is not even registered, their actions are taken. And some of the consequences is that most of the time, although one of the consequences is that you might not be able to maintain a bank account with a financial institution. But then we know that most times some have accounts with banks, But then if they discover that it's something that will deter you, but most of the times businesses that are not registered currently under SCUML have bank accounts, right? But then another consequence that actually kind of stands out is that it can bring about criminal prosecution. Yeah, so it can bring about criminal prosecution. So it's my own advice to businesses out there, firms, accounting firms, law firms, consulting firms of all kinds, and as long as you are in Nigeria, of course, and you want to actually run a successful business, please and please, as long as you come under these businesses, the businesses that have been designated by the ministry, please go and carry out your SCUML registration if you haven't. To save you of stress, please just do. I hope you learned one or two from the discussion from other parts. I hope I was able to try my best to pass the message across to you. Alright, so I'll see you another time. Thank you for paying rapt attention. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next week, Monday. Alright.